So are you wondering how immigration officers know if you have overstayed your visa? Can a visa overstay be forgiven? What happens if you overstay your visa? Like, an overstay is when you have exceeded the period of time that your visa allows. Most countries require that if your visa is granted for a period of time, on or before your visa expires, or before you are on or before the period of time in which you're permitted to stay in that country, you are expected to leave before the expiry of your visa. Now we know that there are circumstances where maybe you traveled and it's impossible. Maybe you're ill, you're admitted in the hospital, or maybe an emergency, something that you reasonably could not foresee would take place. There are circumstances where it may be forgiven, but we're not going to dwell on those circumstances. Of course, maybe if you were ill, if there was an emergency, you've been in the hospital, you were admitted, certainly you would have documents to prove that that was the case. But what happens when maybe for whatever error, maybe you forgot? Is it even possible to forget? Okay, let's assume you forgot. Or maybe there were circumstances that you could not control, and then it led to you overstaying visa. Or maybe your flight was cancelled, or whatever it is. We're going to talk about what happens when you overstay your visa. Now, when a visa is granted, it's usually granted for a period of time. Sometimes it could be 2 weeks, it could be 3 months, it could be 1 year, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. For each visa, especially for the long term, I will focus on the long term visas. If you're granted a long term visa, there's usually a maximum number of days that you're expected to stick around in that country. For example, if you have a 2-year visa to the US, you are not allowed to stay beyond 180 days. So it's usually indicated on your visa. Most countries would not allow you to exceed a period of 180 days, which usually would be 6 months. Now, what happens when you exceed this period? Then it can be said that you have overstayed your visa. When that happens, it is usually not a very good thing, because what that means is that you have violated the terms of the visa that was granted to you. And you can either be, denied. If you are applied the next time, you can be denied. It would be a ground for you to be denied, a renewal. Or if you try to enter the country again, you may be returned back to where you were coming from. You could also be deported if it's found that you've actually overstayed your visa. So it is not something you want to do. And so maybe you probably might ask, like, how would immigration know if I have overstayed my visa? Particularly for countries that you don't get to meet like immigration officers on your way out. For example, the UK, the US, if you're leaving some airport, you would not be stamped out. And so you're wondering, oh, I've escaped. They didn't know. Wait a minute. Don't be too quick. Even if you don't get stamped out at airports, best believe that your airline has submitted details of all the passengers on board that particular flight. So you may not meet immigration officers on your way out, but certainly in their database, they do have record of when you exited the country. Now, if you, let's say, exceeded, the time that you were allowed to, the next time you try to go to that country, you may encounter problems at the port of entry. So you want to ensure that you do not exceed overstay your visa, because it has serious immigration consequences. Now, before you arrive at any country, they already know that you're coming, because airlines submit like the manifest, the data of everyone on board the plane to the country that you're going to. So before you arrive, immigration is aware that you're on that flight. So by the time you come in and then you have issues, you realize that people who have their passports flagged would be delayed, for further questioning. Now, so what happens when you overstay? It would depend on the country that you actually travel to. Most countries would maybe give you like a grace period. Some countries maybe give like a 30-day period within which you are expected to leave. But I always just advise people, it's always best to err on the side of caution, because you never can tell where you might need to go back and apply, and that simple reason, maybe not so simple, might affect the outcome of your renewal, your visa renewal. So you want to ensure that you are not caught in that. Now, what should you do if you have overstayed your visa? The best thing to do at every point in time would be to consult an expert. Certainly, there are people who have seen this over time, an immigration expert that would advise you on the options that are available to you. So if you do find out that you are caught up in that mess, certainly you want to consult an immigration expert who would advise you on the options that are available to you. But you should also understand that once you've erred, the possible option would be, if you're still in the country and you're caught, you would be deported. If you got away with it the first time, if you return to the country, you may not be allowed in, unless maybe you had like compelling circumstances, to remain in the country long after your visa had expired. So I hope this was useful. My name is Tom. If you like this video, hit the like button. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to see more videos like this. So thank you very much for joining me, and see you next time. Bye.